So what you see is you see figs, you see sweet potatoes that are not stressed, you see pepper plants, and the reason you see that is because the hotbed is warm. It gives off just enough heat to keep everything in here from freezing because our nights are in the 30s. So this year I have the new double-sided hotbed greenhouse built, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a hotbed on one side, get it up, get it going, get it growing, and I'm just going to focus on that one side until January. And then in January, which is the normal time to plant a hotbed, I will go to the other side and fill that side up and get that side going. Hey guys, I'm just going to take a little shot quickly to show myself uncovering the frost sensitive plants. You can see over here I've got plenty of cold season plants that don't care about the frost. This side is my herb side, and it has tomatoes and celery and basil and that kind of thing. So today I wanted to walk you through the supplies that I'm gathering, or that I have already gathered, so that you can see what the prep looks like. So this is my mulch pile. This was collected all last winter, and I have moved 3/4 of it into paths to mulch trees, but I left just enough to have good new material in case I needed it for the hotbeds. If you have only manure in a hotbed, it will just stink and slime. You have to have a pretty big layer of carbon. It can be straw, it can be hay, it needs to be dry, and it'll be this deep, and then you'll put on a couple inches of really manure-y, whatever, rabbits, horses, chickens, goats, just manure. A couple inches, and then you put on another big layer of carbon. And what happens is, as you water that, the manure and the bacteria moves down into the carbon and it starts to heat up. So this is my backup if I don't have quite enough used pretty much clean dry bedding from the goats. It takes a very small amount of manure and a very large amount of carbon to do what I do. Yes. You're such a good girl. So I want to show you the bedding in here. It doesn't stink in here. It's just bedding that has built up, and it keeps them nice and warm. But this is ideal for a hotbed. All right, so this is my compost bin for the backyard. It's a small version of a hotbed. It's square instead of rectangular, so I do plant into it. I can plant strawberries or something in the top of it, which I have done, but it's a spring bed, not a hotbed for winter, and that's because of its size. The minimum size of a hotbed that you want to use in the winter is the width of a pallet, so about 4 feet wide by a minimum of 8 feet long. You can go as long as you possibly want to or can, but it has to be a minimum of 4 feet wide and 8 feet long. I like to have my hotbed at about waist height, not boob height. This is too tall. If that bed sinks at all, I will have to reach in and hunch over in order to reach the garden bed. So the ones that I prefer are at my waist height, and if they sink, it doesn't really matter. Pick it up. So the rabbit cages fit on that lathe, and then they poop into the hotbed. We have paper, we have eggshells, we have rabbit fiber. I mean, this is not a tidy compost pile. This is a dump everything in and then plant your garden on top of a compost pile. And we compost everything. And yes, I did purposefully plant clover in here. I wanted to see how a cover crop would do in a hotbed. Hi guys. So anything that will break down, anything that's compostable, goes in here and it breaks down on its own. This is 3 years old and we've been putting stuff in it for 3 years because the rain gets on it. All this beautiful juicy stuff that comes out of the kitchen goes on it. The butchering stuff goes on it. We pour milk onto it. And so it has all this lovely bacterial action and fungal action in it that just continues to break things down, and it never fills. And so by the time I get to the bottom of what's inside this compost bin, I'll just find compost, even though it's never been turned and it's been going for 3 years. This is what an old hotbed looks like. You can see it's broken down quite a bit. I line my hotbeds with a variety of things. This one is lined with old greenhouse plastic. I have one here next to me that has been lined with old feed sacks, and then the one back there has an old banner, like the billboard banners that you see on the freeway. You can get those for free in a lot of places, and so I lined that one with billboard plastic, and then I have 1, 2, 3 of them that are lined with tin from an old calf shed. I currently, in one of my new hotbeds, I lined that with ground fabric, like weed barrier fabric, but I don't think it's going to be enough for a January hotbed. So I'm lining that one with cardboard rather than worrying about trying to find tin or something else. I'm just taking some really nice cardboard that came from one of our electric trike deliveries, and I'm going to just line the inside with cardboard, and it's going to work just fine, which is really exciting. I get really excited about really big pieces of cardboard because of that. So this is the one that's lined with old feed sacks. This one is also 3 years old and it's holding up just fine. It is not disintegrating too bad, and it's just stapled all the way around. These are some of the sheets of tin that are the optimal thing to line your hotbeds with. You can see it has really big holes in it because, again, it was harvested from a calf shed that was, I don't know, 80 years old. Has big holes in it. It doesn't matter. The hotbed doesn't care. This is the only thing you can line the hotbed with that won't eventually disintegrate. This is the one that was lined with old billboard tarps. I had other tarps that I also used to line this that had holes in them, and that's worked fine. I have 4 rows of potatoes up in the front. And so these little ones that I popped in here because I was kind of running out of places to put things don't really matter. Hopefully you guys can see this.
I guess me and Kai have eaten all the peppers off that.
So there's one. Off this one? Is that why there's no peppers on it?
Yeah. Although there are some more flowers coming out, so.
Ooh. Alright, hopefully you guys can see that. These were russets. Alright, so I wanted to show you my hotbed from February and March this last year. And I don't use a greenhouse for my summer gardening per se. I do my winter gardening in a greenhouse, and then we're still eating from our greenhouse when we get to the time of year when we can just plant into the ground. And so this is pretty much my harvesting, my summer harvesting garden, because I planted it in February. If I was planting a normal garden in our area, which is in southeast Idaho, you don't plant your garden until the end of May because of our frost date. We still have frost in the end of June. You can plant the end of May, but you can't really plant things like tomatoes and stuff like that unless you're really, really going to protect them. So the hotbed gets planted the end of February, and then we eat out of it for the rest of the year, and all we do at that point is water it. All of my actual gardening happens late winter, early spring, and we eat out of it for the rest of the year. I plant my tomatoes in here in like March, and then they just stay in here and they're happy, and we have a whole bunch of little tomatoes still left in here. Simplicity is really a big deal for me. effectiveness and affordability is really big for me. I don't want to have to spend a lot of money on electricity in order to have a greenhouse. Hi, Beethoven. I love sheep because they can, like if I put goats here in my greenhouse, they would come through and they'd try to stand up on the sides of the greenhouse and they'd have footprints in the plastic and stuff like that, but the sheep don't. They're not that athletic. They'll come in and they'll nibble on this and they'll eat the weeds out of the pathway and that's all they'll do. Sheep are so easy that way. Hi. I don't have anything. Here, you want a little piece of that? You've been out here nibbling on it. Okay guys, I have the 3 supports up. Winter. The thing I love about these cow panel hotbed greenhouses is that when the snow starts to come, it just slides off and then insulates the sides of the greenhouse. Whereas with my Tough greenhouse, which is a commercial greenhouse, it only has ribs about every 5 feet, and so the snow has to be removed in order to keep it from collapsing the plastic. So my first hotbed greenhouse had a very narrow path because I was trying to do it with only 1 span of cow panel. And in order to use pallets, which is in my opinion the easiest way to do it, and then to only have 1 span of cow panel across, you have to have a very, very narrow path between the hotbeds. Which is fine as long as you have a way to get all your mulch in. But if you want to use a wheelbarrow, you need a bigger path. So that's why there's 2 cow panels that are attached to each other over the top instead of 1. It was to still give me the high acute angle of the bend and enough strength to still shed snow. So if you're interested in the hotbed greenhouse plans, I do have them on my Etsy store. My favorite part about these hotbed greenhouses is that I have somewhere to play in the winter when I'm struggling for lack of sunshine. It gives me somewhere to go out and feel like I'm being useful, because I am being useful, but I get to do it out in the sun. I get to go in somewhere warm. I feel like I'm on a little bit of a safari when I come in, because on bright days I take off the frost cloth and I've got all this greenery and I can take it in and I can cook it and it's wonderful. The books that I love that taught me how to do this are, the first one is by Jack First, and his book is Hotbeds, and then it's Stand Up and Garden by Mary Moss Sprague, and she's the one that taught me how to do these. She doesn't use pallets, but I like to use pallets. And she also uses chicken wire on hers instead of completely enclosing the inside, but that's because she's doing them in the spring in a humid environment. I am doing them in the winter in a very dry environment. And so I need to protect that my moisture isn't coming out the sides and my heat isn't coming out the sides. So that's why I insulate and also retain water with solid types of linings on the inside. But those are my 2 favorite books that taught me how to do this. And then David the Good is one of the books I read about how to compost everything. So his book is called Compost Everything, and it gives you some confidence in what you can and cannot put into your compost piles. So I'm super enjoying this fall weather, coming out and just tinkering. And it's time to stop tinkering and just start to get the hotbed built, because I can plant now. I can plant salad, I can plant carrots, I can plant turnips, I can plant all sorts of things in these hotbeds and have harvestable things to eat by Christmas. So I'm gonna get started. Thanks for coming along, and we'll talk to you later.